And 15 years ago, I came to the conclusion that electronic money will take over from paper money. That's already happening now. From the time the next war starts, the next big war starts, I believe that's going to be the opportune moment for them to bring down the curtain on the US dollar. And they'll demonetize the US dollar. And that's going to cause tremendous loss, particularly for white America. Because white America is more wealthy than black America. Everybody knows that. Not only must there be this economic collapse in the United States in order that the United States may no longer be the ruling state in the world, but you must also have a military disaster. Because this is what happened when Britain was the prior ruling state. In order for Britain to be replaced by the United States, Britain had to be brought to the verge of defeat, and that's what happened in the First World War. And again, in the Second World War, had it not been for the intervention of the United States, Britain would have been defeated. Similarly, we are looking towards tomorrow when the United States is going to be placed into a military situation which will be facing defeat. And if Israel does not intervene, the United States will be gone militarily. So history will repeat itself. I don't know what that is going to be. I don't know. It could possibly be that an attack on Iran takes place, and Iran is then provoked to take over Bahrain, which is largely Shia, and Iranian forces are moving towards Saudi Arabia. And the United States is forced to intervene in the desert there. And because the United States was already so militarily stretched out, they're going to be facing a difficult situation in the desert. And unless Israel intervenes, the United States might face defeat in the desert. This is one possible scenario. I don't know whether this will take place. But the United States will have to give way to Israel. Israel takes over from the United States as the next ruling state in the world in order for the Antichrist to stand up in Jerusalem and declare that I am the Messiah. Now, in order for Israel, I'm sorry for this long answer, in order for Israel...
No, I appreciate it.
In order for Israel to convince the Jews that it is indeed ruling the world, it has to begin that process, Jim, by establishing its political and economic dominion over the Arabs. And so what we are seeing now is the preparatory phase for the slaughter of the Arabs. As the rising tide of Islam emerges with elections taking place all around and Islamic parties winning, and they are congratulating themselves that we are coming out of bondage and we are now free once again, they're actually being prepared for the slaughter.
That's a truly fascinating analysis, Imran, and it seems to me there are many very plausible aspects to everything you are saying. I am rather struck that from the point of view of eschatology, that the ultimate end from the perspective of all three religions is a form of benevolent dictatorship. It's ironic that so much that has been done in the Middle East and elsewhere, especially by the United States in its acts of aggression around the world, has been done in the name of democracy and freedom. And yet, the end of history from the perspective you have just described would actually be a divine individual, presumably, and a benevolent one, but nevertheless a dictator, which someone who has all power to control political decisions and outcomes, which seems to me to be quite remarkable, while students of political theory have generally concurred that a benevolent dictatorship is the most efficient form of government in distributing justice. For example, assuming that the dictatorship is implemented in accordance with principles of justice, it's still striking to me, having not reflected before on the convergence of the theologies of the three great religions, that this should be the case.
Well, I would not say it's going to be a benevolent dictatorship. The Antichrist is full of deception. Appearance and reality would be different from each other. It would be, in fact, the ultimate dictatorship. The ultimate dictatorship. It would have the appearance of being benevolent. You had Pax Britannica, when we were just children, you and I. I was born in 1942. So when I was a boy, we had to sing God Save the King, because Britain ruled over the Caribbean island of Trinidad. So you had Pax Britannica, appeared to the world to be benevolent, whereas Pax Britannica set the stage for the occupation of lands all over the world, the transformation of these territories from governments and from peoples who worship the one God into secular states. And so the rule of law which came from the divine law, where, for example, you had a market which is free and fair, and that if you stole, they cut off your hands. Not, of course, a mango, but if you stole something of value, your hand would be cut off. And so before the European occupation of these territories, European colonialism, we had systems, political systems and economic systems, which were indigenous to us, and which worked better than one which was imposed upon us with Pax Britannica. The secularization of the economy, the removal of gold and silver coins as money, the replacement of gold and silver coins with this bogus and absolutely and utterly fraudulent paper currencies. This was not something benevolent. This was something evil. And then you had Pax Britannica gave way to Pax Americana. And with Pax Americana, the world experienced something even worse than what we had in Britain. And so when Pax Judaica takes over from Pax Britannica, giving the appearance that this is the ultimate benevolent dictatorship, this is the best that you can ever have, it will in fact be the worst. I think that Israel is now going to move from the current secular political system to a monarchy. Because ancient Israel had a monarch, it was King David and King Solomon. And when Israel becomes a monarchy tomorrow, Israel is going to bring back gold and silver coins as money. Oh yes. I think Ron Paul is going to be very pleased with that. When Israel has to bring back gold and silver coins as money. Why? Because the temple in Jerusalem minted its own coins. The temple minted its own gold and silver coins, and you had to go to the temple and use temple money. That was kosher money to do transactions. And so no Jew would accept Israel to be holy Israel tomorrow if Israel continues to use this bogus and fraudulent paper currency that came out of the international monetary system. Tomorrow when Israel brings back gold and silver coins as money, of course all the rest of Europe will follow suit, the appearance will be that this is something positive, that Israel is actually bringing order to a disordered world. And Israel can bring peace to a world full of war. But Jim, this is actually going to be the ultimate dictatorship. The worst that the world has ever experienced. It's coming tomorrow.
Imran, this is absolutely fascinating. We have to take a break. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my very special guest today, Imran Hossein, a leading international Islamic philosopher. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, continuing my conversation with Imran Hossein, who was born in the Caribbean island of Trinidad in 1942. He has lived in New York for 10 years. He served as the Director of Islamic Studies for the Joint Committee of Muslim Organizations of Greater New York. He has lectured widely around the world, and I am simply delighted to have him here with me today. Imran, let me ask, when we talk about monarchies and dictatorships, we're talking about a rule of men or of leaders rather than a rule of law. And in addition, I'm concerned about the relationship between rulings by religious authorities in relation to principles of morality. It would be my contention that a systematic evaluation of alternative moral theories leads to the conclusion that the most fundamental principle of morality can be found in the second formulation of the categorical imperative enunciated by Immanuel Kant, to wit, that we should always treat other persons as ends and never merely as means, which entails showing respect for others, and in relationship to the imposition of punishments, providing them with due process, some opportunities to confront their accusers, present evidence against their charges being brought against them, and so forth. There are certainly principles found in the Bible, the Old Testament, for example, that seem to contravene such principles of treating persons with respect, including, among others, that mediums or spiritualists should be put to death, that persons who have been guilty of adultery should be put to death, that children who curse their parents should be not given time out, not sent to their rooms, not deprived of television for a week, but put to death. I am very interested in your views about how to reconcile principles of morality, of due process and justice with the kind of rule being contemplated here, unless, of course, since we're talking about a dictatorship by an antichrist or Christ, where I'm fascinated by your remarks about all of this, it may be that such questions, simply from a theological perspective, no longer have significance.
Well, insofar as the Christian religion is concerned, I think it will be proper for a Christian theologian to respond to you about what is to be found in the Christian scriptures. Similarly with the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament or the Torah,